You ever wonder what it feels like to be erased from your own family? Not forgotten. Erased. They used my name when it suited them, ignored it when it didn't. I wore a uniform they never respected, fought battles they never saw, and stood for something they could never understand. This isn't just a story about betrayal, it's about truth, power, and what happens when the person they thought would stay quiet decides to speak. By the end of this, you'll know why I walked into my sister's wedding in full military dress and walked out leaving their perfect little world in flames. If you're ready for a story that starts with silence and ends with freedom, stay with me. And hey, if this hit something real for you, don't forget to like the video, drop a comment, and subscribe. There's more where this came from. I never liked mirrors. Growing up, there was this one, framed in gold and gilt, hanging in the foyer of our house in Charleston. Every time I passed it, I caught a glimpse of someone I was supposed to be. Polished, smiling, obedient. Someone wearing a pearl necklace and silence like a second skin. That mirror never showed me. Not really. My name is Alison Grayson. I'm 32. I serve as a lieutenant colonel in the United States Army, and I am the family disappointment. I suppose I should have seen it coming early on. The quiet corrections at the dinner table, the way my mother's voice tightened every time I talked about joining the JROTC program in high school. "That's not what Graysons do, darling," she used to say, pouring Chardonnay into her crystal glass like it was a prayer that could wash me clean of whatever rebellion she saw in my bones. We were the Graysons of Charleston, not the Kennedy kind of famous, but close enough. My father, Raymond Grayson, is a partner at one of the most powerful law firms on the East Coast. My mother, Evelyn, has never worked a day in her life, but managed to turn social climbing into an Olympic sport. My younger sister, Melissa, is the picture-perfect debutante. All white smiles and charity galas and designer dresses worn only once. And then there's me, the ghost in the family album. They used to Photoshop me out of photos. I found out by accident one Thanksgiving when a family friend posted a picture from our childhood. I remembered that moment. I was there, holding Melissa's hand, still in my uniform from basic training because I'd flown straight in. But there I was. Or wasn't. Cropped clean out. Like a bruise no one wanted in the frame. They never said it outright. But I knew. I was tolerated, not embraced. Present, not included. When I was deployed overseas for the second time, I didn't get a single call from them. Not even a birthday message. I remember getting one from my commanding officer instead. He gave me a pack of M&Ms and a pat on the back. I think that moment meant more to me than any birthday cake ever could. I stopped asking for their approval a long time ago. But some wounds don't close just because you stop bleeding. That's where this story really begins. Not with the past, but with the knock at my door last spring. It was a Friday. Early. The kind of morning where the world still feels undecided. I was stationed in Fort Bragg, catching up on reports when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something, maybe boredom, maybe instinct, made me pick up. "Allie," the voice said. Not Allison, not Lieutenant Colonel, just Allie, the way only two people in the world used to call me. It was my sister, Melissa. And that was the first red flag. We hadn't spoken in 3 years. Not since the last family Christmas I let myself attend, where she introduced me to her friends as my sister, the army one, like I was a curiosity behind glass. And now, out of nowhere, she was calling. "I need to talk to you. It's about the wedding," she said. I didn't know she was engaged. I didn't even know she was dating anyone. There was a pause on the line. She sounded nervous, hesitant, like she was choosing each word with surgical care. "We want you there, of course," she said. Of course. I could already picture the smile she was wearing when she said it, the one she used when she wanted something. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I just listened. And that's when I heard it. A second voice, faint in the background, too far from the phone to be part of the call. A man's voice, older, sharper, saying something like, "Just tell her what she needs to know." The air in my office felt colder. Melissa laughed nervously. "Sorry, that was nothing." But it wasn't. Something was off. I could feel it. This wasn't a peace offering. It was a setup. And I didn't know why. Not yet. But I was going to find out. The invitation came in a thick, cream-colored envelope with gold embossing and the kind of calligraphy that made your name look like it belonged to someone more delicate than you really were. Lieutenant Colonel Alison Grayson. They had actually used my full title. I stared at it longer than I should have, trying to decide if that was progress or performance. The return address was my parents' house. Of course. Inside, beneath the smell of expensive paper and perfume, was a printed card with swirling cursive. "Mr. and Mrs. Raymond Grayson request the honor of your presence at the wedding of their daughter, Melissa Grayson, to Mr. Jonathan L. Whitmore, son of General Whitmore." And there it was, the truth peeking through the folds of satin ribbon and formal pleasantries. Jonathan Whitmore, son of General Lawrence Whitmore, head of strategic acquisitions. A name I'd heard more than once in classified briefings. A man with a sterling public image and a growing shadow behind closed doors. The general had a reputation. Nothing concrete, nothing proven, but there were whispers about procurement contracts, preferential deals, suppliers chosen not for merit but for allegiance. Whispers that never found daylight. Until now, maybe. The more I thought about it, the more the call made sense. Melissa didn't want me at her wedding because I was her sister. She wanted me there because I wore a uniform, because I had access. Still, I didn't say no. I needed to see this for myself. Before I left, I called Marcus Reed, my closest friend in the service. He was one of the few people who truly knew me. The version of me my family had never bothered to meet. We'd served together on deployment twice, once in Kandahar, once in Mosul. The kind of loyalty you earn when someone drags your bleeding body out of a collapsed building doesn't fade with time. "Think they're trying to use you?" he asked, not even pretending to sugarcoat it. "I don't think," I said. "I know." Marcus didn't hesitate. "You want backup?" "Not yet," I replied. "But I might need your brain." He grinned through the phone. "It's yours. Just don't ask me to wear a tie." The house looked the same. White columns, manicured lawn, windows like narrowed eyes. My mother's Range Rover was parked in the circular driveway, still spotless enough to reflect the sky. When I stepped inside, the air smelled like lilac and control. My mother stood at the top of the staircase, her arms folded, lips painted red and tight. "You came," she said. "You invited me," I replied. We stared at each other for a beat too long, both assessing the enemy. She gestured toward the sitting room. "Your sister's upstairs. We have things to discuss." I followed her in, trying not to react to the photos on the wall. All perfectly staged, carefully curated, smiling faces, champagne flutes, and in none of them, me. We sat. She didn't offer tea. That wasn't the point of this meeting. My father joined us a minute later, his salt and pepper hair slicked back, his posture too upright for comfort. "We're glad you're here," he began. It sounded rehearsed. "This wedding is an opportunity. Not just for Melissa, for all of us." There it was, the pitch. I let them talk. About politics, about image, about proximity to General Whitmore. And then, the real ask. "We need you to introduce us," my father said casually. "Not officially. Just bring him into a conversation. Tell him about your deployments, your work in procurement." I blinked. "My classified work in procurement? He flinched slightly, then smiled, like a man trying to sell poison as perfume. Just enough to open the door. The rest will follow. It wasn't a request. It was a strategy. They wanted me to be bait. I stood. I'm not a pawn in your little chess game, I said. Alison, my mother cut in sharply, this could be good for all of us. For once, think like a Grayson. I laughed. It surprised even me. I stopped thinking like a Grayson the day I realized honor wasn't something you inherited. You earn it. I left the room, their voices rising behind me in frustrated whispers. Upstairs, Melissa was waiting in her old bedroom. She smiled when I entered. Not warmly, but like someone hoping you'd forgotten what they did. You look strong, she said. You look expensive, I replied. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. Jonathan's important to my future, she said quietly. To all of ours. I leaned against the doorframe. Did he ask you to call me? She hesitated. That was all I needed. I turned to leave. Allie, wait, she said. Don't ruin this. I looked over my shoulder. Then don't make me. That night, I sent Marcus everything. The names. The dates. The company's linked to Whitmore. He called me 3 hours later. His voice was low and serious. You're not imagining it, he said. There's a contract. A big one. Infrastructure upgrades in Europe. The specs are too vague. The partners are all shell corporations. And guess who sits on the oversight committee? Whitmore? I said. Not just him. Your father's firm is listed as legal counsel for one of the shell companies. My throat went dry. They were deeper in it than I thought. I felt like the ground beneath me had shifted. Like I'd stepped into a version of my family I didn't recognize, or maybe one I had always refused to see clearly. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I polished my uniform. I would wear it to the wedding. Not for them, but for me. Because if they were going to try to use my name, my rank, my honor, they'd have to do it with me watching. And I don't look away. I arrived precisely at 3:00 p.m., just as the guests were being ushered toward the garden. The Grayson estate had been transformed into a luxury fantasy. White rose archways, silk canopies billowing in the breeze, and champagne already flowing into crystal flutes held by people with last names that opened doors. My boots struck the stone pathway with more confidence than I felt. The moment I stepped onto the property in full dress uniform, medals, ribbons, pins, and stripes polished to perfection, the whispers began. Soft, scattered, sharp. I was used to stares, but this wasn't curiosity. It was calculation, recognition. Some saw the uniform and thought of service. Others saw it and thought of leverage. I didn't wear it for either of them. My mother spotted me before I reached the terrace. She moved like a ghost through the crowd, her smile fixed, her eyes cold. Alison, she said, pulling me aside, what on earth are you wearing? My uniform, I replied. The one I earned. This is a wedding, not a military parade, she hissed. I glanced around. It's also a battlefield. But I figured you already knew that. She didn't respond. Her silence was louder than any insult. Inside, the reception area was staged like a magazine cover, gold-rimmed china, monogrammed menus, seating cards in heavy script. I found mine near the edge of the room, at a table filled with distant cousins and convenient strangers. I wasn't surprised. The closer tables were for people being groomed, not those being tolerated. Melissa was stunning in her gown, her arm looped around Jonathan Whitmore's like a possession, not a promise. They looked perfect, which meant they were hiding something. General Lawrence Whitmore arrived late, the kind of late that made people wait. He wore his reputation like a second uniform, iron posture, white hair cut too short, eyes too sharp for comfort. His presence changed the room. Conversations hushed, attention shifted. This was the man they were all really here to impress. I waited. observed, took mental notes of who greeted him, who avoided him, who looked nervous. When the speeches began, I braced myself. My father took the microphone, smiled his polished smile. He spoke about family, legacy, tradition, words he wore like armor. Then he pivoted. "I want to say a special thank you," he said, glancing in my direction. "To my daughter, Lieutenant Colonel Alison Grayson, whose service honors our nation and, today, brings great pride to this family." It was a clean lie, but well delivered. The room clapped. I didn't stand. I didn't smile. I simply stared at him, steady and quiet, and watched him look away first. The next speaker was Jonathan. His voice was smoother than expected, like a man who'd learned how to lie with charm. "We are grateful for the support of both our families," he said, "and proud to join forces in a shared vision for the future, one of innovation, service, and integrity." That was the moment I knew. He wasn't marrying Melissa. He was marrying the Grayson name. She was just the dowry. I stood up from the table, slowly, deliberately, all eyes turned toward me. "I'd like to say a few words," I said. It wasn't a request. It was a challenge. There was a pause. Tension so sharp it could slice glass. But Jonathan, trying to appear gracious, nodded. "Of course," he said. "Please." I took the microphone with both hands. My pulse was steady. My voice was not raised. I didn't need volume. I had truth. "Some of you know me. Most of you don't. I'm not usually invited to these kinds of events. My family prefers to forget I exist. Until I'm useful." The air shifted. People exchanged looks. My mother's smile had vanished. My father was already reaching for his whiskey glass. "I came here today not for the cake, not for the flowers, and definitely not for the family portrait. I came because I started connecting dots. And the picture that formed was dirty." Now I had their attention. I continued. "General Whitmore is overseeing a multi-billion-dollar contract for defense infrastructure. The legal counsel listed for one of the partner companies, Grayson, Shaw, and Leland, my father's firm." My father stood up. "That's enough, Allison." I ignored him. "One of the shell companies bidding on that contract is registered to an address in Delaware, a building that houses nothing but a mailbox. That same company made a generous donation to a nonprofit connected to Melissa's wedding planner, who just happens to be a former administrative assistant in the General's procurement division." Dead silence. "This isn't a wedding," I said. "It's a transaction. A way to merge influence, to conceal a deal dressed up as family celebration. And they thought I'd stand quietly in a corner and let it happen. Because that's what I always did." My voice didn't tremble. I'd buried people I cared about. I'd seen things none of these people could imagine. Their discomfort didn't scare me. I looked at Melissa. Her eyes were wide, her hands gripping Jonathan's arms so tightly her knuckles were white. "You knew?" I asked her, softer this time. She didn't answer, but her silence was deafening. "I fought for this country," I said. "Not for people like you, but for people who believe that integrity isn't for sale, who don't trade uniforms for invitations or betray their oath for a bigger slice of the pie." I set the microphone down and walked out. No one followed me, except Marcus, who was leaning casually against his rental car outside, arms crossed, sunglasses reflecting the sun. He handed me a cold bottle of water. "You sure know how to clear a room." I took a long sip. "Was it enough?" He nodded. "We've got the trail. That speech was just the fire starter. The real match is what's coming next. And trust me, they're going to feel the heat." I leaned against the hood of the car, the fabric of my uniform stiff from tension and heat. But my chest felt light. For the first time in years, I could breathe. The silence in my childhood room was strange. I hadn't stepped inside it in years, but everything looked the same. The pale blue walls, the trophies I never asked for, the shelf of books I'd memorized before I was 16. My old ROTC medal still hung on the corkboard, slightly crooked, just as I'd left it. Back then, I thought it meant I was going somewhere, that it proved I had worth. Now, it felt like the start of a long journey I never truly got to choose, only survive. I sat on the bed and stared at the mirror on the closet door, the one that had never liked me much. For the first time in a long time, I didn't look away. Downstairs, the wedding was unraveling. Guests were leaving in clusters, tight knots of gossip and disapproval. Jonathan had stormed off not long after my speech, and Melissa hadn't followed. My parents were too busy controlling the fallout to bother chasing after me. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. The next morning, I left before the sun rose. No goodbye, no note. Just a neatly folded uniform in my bag and a suitcase that felt lighter than it should have. Marcus was waiting for me at a diner just outside of town, the kind with sticky menus and coffee that could strip paint. He looked up from his booth, saw me, and smiled like I was exactly who I was supposed to be. "Was starting to think you'd ghosted me," he said. I sat across from him. "I considered it." He slid a file across the table. "Everything's moving. Investigators opened a quiet probe last night. The wedding video went viral. Someone filmed your speech. They tried to take it down, but too late. Damage is done." I flipped the folder open. Names, dates, documents. The whole web unraveling. It should have felt like a victory, but it didn't. Not yet. "You okay?" Marcus asked. I looked out the window. Morning light painted the parking lot in gold. A group of kids passed by in Little League uniforms, laughing about something that didn't matter. And for the first time, I felt still. "I think I'm getting there," I said. The truth was, I hadn't just lost a family, I'd lost the illusion of one, and somehow, that felt like freedom. When I got back to the base later that week, the sun was just starting to dip. Shadows stretched long over the tarmac, and the flag outside headquarters flapped in the wind like it had something to say. Inside, my desk was waiting. Neat, familiar, honest. A card sat on the corner, unsigned. Just a single sentence in Marcus's handwriting. "You don't need blood to have a family." He was right. My family was in the voices of my unit, in the silence we shared on night shifts, in the eyes of the people I'd served beside in places that tried to kill us. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't framed in gold. But it was real. That night, I walked alone to the training field. No one else was there. Just the steady rhythm of my boots on gravel and the hum of distant generators. I stopped in the center and looked up. The stars were sharp, clean, endless. No photoshopped smiles, no expectations, no mirrors. Just me. And that was enough. So, that's how it happened. That's how I lost the version of family I thought I needed, and found the one I deserved. Life doesn't always give you clean lines between right and wrong. Sometimes it gives you silence, betrayal, and a choice. To become like them, or to stay true to who you are. It wasn't easy. It still isn't. But I'd rather stand alone in my truth than sit quietly in someone else's lie. If this story moved you or made you think about your own path, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Here, we tell real stories. Stories about ordinary people who've been through the fire, through betrayal, heartbreak, loss, and still chose to rise. And trust me, there are more of them coming. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourself. And never forget who you are.